Aaron was born on July 15, 1994, in the United States to parents whose identities remain unknown. Fortunately, she was adopted by La and William, a couple from Tennessee. Together they raised 7 children in all, 5 of whom, including Aaron, were adopted. For La and William, adoption went beyond a simple decision. It was an act of obedience to a divine call to help those in need, especially since several of their adopted children required special attention and care. Their youngest, Tricia, for instance, was born with multiple birth defects. From her earliest years growing up in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Erin displayed an exceptional and boundless love for animals. Her mother warmly remembered how Erin was the only one who could train a rabbit to walk on a leash just like a dog. Gentle and kind-hearted by nature, Erin thrived in the warmth of a tight-knit, supportive family, facing only the usual challenges found in any typical home. When Tricia passed away at just 3.5 years old, Lynn and William helped their grieving children see the beauty in having given her a happy life, however brief. Over time, Erin channeled her deep affection for animals into a remarkable talent for taming horses that others found impossible to handle. She had a pony named Riley, stabled not far from home. In 5th grade, she first met Jonathan Corwin, who was 1 year her senior. They weren't particularly close at first, but about 5 years later they started connecting through social media. By then, Erin's caring nature had led her to look after dozens of animals: fish, guinea pigs, cats, dogs, all taken in and nurtured by her. Eventually Jonathan found the courage to ask her out, choosing her 16th birthday for the moment. With her parents' blessing, their relationship blossomed. Filled with exchanged poems and shared dreams, they seemed like the picture-perfect American couple. After high school graduation, Erin took a job at a nearby tractor supply store, spending her free time with her horse or browsing garage sales alongside her mother and siblings. Meanwhile, Jonathan joined the Marine Infantry, both of them confident in the bright future awaiting them. They married in Las Vegas in November 2012. The following year Jonathan learned he would be reassigned to California. Though the move excited them both, they planned to return to East Tennessee as soon as possible. In September 2013, the young couple settled into their new home at the Marine Base in San Bernardino County, an area that also served as an entry to Joshua Tree National Park. There they built new friendships, including with Connor and Ian Maliki, a couple living on the ground floor of the same building with their little boy, Brian. In day-to-day life, Jonathan also grew close to another Marine, Christopher Brandon Lee. The son of Karen Lee and originally from Anchorage, Alaska, Christopher had been having a difficult time since returning from deployment in Afghanistan. He lived on base with his wife Nicole and their 6-year-old daughter, Liberty. Like Aaron, the couple shared an enthusiasm for horses. Soon the three couples became tight-knit friends. While the husbands were at work, Aaron, Ian, and Nicole would drop by each other's places for lunch and conversation. When Jonathan, Connor, and Christopher were home, they'd cook meals together or watch TV shows and movies in one another's apartments. It felt as if every home was open to everyone. Christopher and Nicole also became sponsors for horses at Roa Blanca Ranch, home to a non-profit focused on animal welfare and rescue. The property belonged to Isabel Megley. Once Erin heard about it, she naturally got involved too. Despite the demands of military life, things appeared to be going well at first. Christopher initially seemed well adapted to service, but over time other Marines noticed his habit of mixing chaos and disrespect when dealing with weapons. A superior eventually reprimanded him for treating rifles and rocket launchers like toys, earning him a reputation for being reckless. For the Corwins, living far from both families brought stresses that tested their relationship beyond the honeymoon phase. Their youth left them somewhat unprepared for the realities of marriage, resulting in frequent arguments over money and accusations of overspending. But when Erin learned she was pregnant, all the strain and bitterness melted away. She was overjoyed and shared the news on social media with a post featuring blue and pink. Tragically, just weeks later she suffered a miscarriage, leaving her heartbroken. Compounding the pain, Jonathan's frequent absences for training exercises away from base meant he couldn't be there to support her emotionally or physically. The cracks in their marriage not only reappeared but deepened. During quiet moments, Christopher had noticed the profound sadness on Erin's face. From then on he began spending more time alone with her, without Nicole around. One Sunday evening in February 2014, the Lees came over to the Corwins' apartment. Jonathan and Nicole settled in to watch an episode of a zombie series, but Aaron, unsettled by the violence, opted out. Instead of staying with his wife, Christopher followed Aaron into the master bedroom to play video games, sitting side by side on the floor. After a few minutes, one of them paused the game. They looked at each other, and without a word they shared their first kiss. Brief though it was, that single moment changed everything, and their affair quickly grew intense. Soon Aaron and Christopher were talking about leaving their spouses and how naturally she would step into the role of stepmother to Liberty, whom she frequently cared for. Meanwhile, Nicole sensed her husband pulling away and eventually checked his phone, discovering the messages between him and Aaron. Furious, she unleashed hours of bitter accusations at Christopher. She didn't stop there, she also told Jonathan about the affair, sparking an explosive all-night confrontation. When Aaron tried to leave, Nicole, eyes blazing with anger, hurled threats at her. Aaron and Christopher ended the affair. But after several weeks they secretly resumed seeing each other. Around that time Christopher wrote a poem for Aaron, urging her to hold on to hope. Unaware the betrayal continued, Jonathan remained determined to salvage his marriage. Then on June 22, 2014, while anxiously awaiting her mother's first visit to California, Aaron discovered she was pregnant again, this time undeniably with Christopher's child. She didn't post about it online but told him. At first he acted pleased, but inwardly he was troubled, worried the pregnancy would disrupt his plans. Though he made promises of a future together to Aaron, Christopher had no real intention of leaving Nicole and dreaded her reaction to the news. His Marine service was nearing its end. On July 4, 2014, he was set to finish and prepare to move back to Alaska with his wife, putting the messy affair behind him. The next day Christopher told Isabel he had been out in the desert exploring and was thrilled by some unusual finds, particularly a hard-to-reach mineshaft. He then asked to borrow her white propane tank. She agreed without question. Meanwhile he began searching online for ways to dispose of a body. After that he texted Aaron, inviting her to a surprise romantic evening in the national park. Thrilled, Aaron immediately messaged a friend back in Tennessee to share the news. As they guessed about his intentions and the surprise, her friends sent a ring emoji. Aaron confessed she was excited at the thought of a proposal. They set the date for June 28. Christopher told Nicole he had planned a coyote hunting trip in Joshua Tree National Park with Connor, conveniently allowing him to bring his Winchester .22 caliber rifle. Early that morning he also loaded the propane tank and gasoline. Before leaving he told Nicole that Connor had cancelled, so he would go alone. Around 7:30 a.m. Aaron told Jonathan she was heading to Joshua Tree to check out trails she and her mother might bike later. She kissed him goodbye, said she loved him, and left him believing things were finally getting back to normal. When she reached the meeting spot, Aaron faced a brutal reality. There was no dream proposal, only a man filled with rage directed entirely at her. What happened next is known mostly to him alone. What is clear is that he fired shots into the air, then used a rope tied to 2 rebar stakes to strangle her, cutting off her air. Once she fell lifeless, he checked for signs of life, confirmed she was gone, and threw her body into the mineshaft he had found days earlier. Aaron plummeted 76 meters down. Hours passed with no word from his wife. Jonathan grew frantic, calling her at least 50 times before reporting her missing the next morning and contacting his mother-in-law. She thought her daughter, who had always struggled with directions, might simply be lost in the huge park. Days went by with no news. When information finally emerged, it brought no comfort. A woman in a remote area noticed a car parked near her home for several days, an unusual sight. She photographed it and shared the pictures, hoping the owner would claim it. Those photos proved vital. The vehicle belonged to Aaron. When police told Aaron's family her car had been found abandoned several kilometers north of the park, her mother felt a stab of dread. To her it strongly suggested her daughter had met with something terrible. The police shared that suspicion. From that point the authorities pursued 2 goals, one far harder than the other. The first was gathering evidence to prosecute whoever might have harmed her. In that effort San Bernardino detectives examined Aaron's life and uncovered hidden details that could have put her at risk. Through this Jonathan learned the affair had secretly resumed. That revelation quickly cleared him as a suspect. Suspicion shifted to Christopher, especially after tire tracks near Aaron's car matched his vehicle. On July 1, 2014, Christopher was interviewed by police. By then he had hidden his rifle at Isabel's ranch. He first apologized for not mentioning his connection to Aaron, claiming their contact had never crossed marital boundaries. Then, suddenly, he said Aaron had told him she was a victim of domestic abuse. About the Saturday she vanished, he admitted being alone in the park area, supposedly hunting coyotes, which accounted for shots fired at rocks. When confronted with evidence, he changed his story. Without a body, investigators couldn't press harder. Lacking sufficient proof to charge him, after 9 hours they had to let him go. Police still found his explanations odd and unconvincing. Later a detective spoke with Nicole and noticed her reluctance to help, almost as if she resented the inquiry. Christopher was discharged from the Marines as planned. He and Nicole packed up, loaded their truck with young Liberty, and returned to Alaska. Meanwhile the police faced their tougher task, locating Aaron's remains and proving this wasn't merely a voluntary disappearance. The case seemed to stall, leaving detectives frustrated. That changed when Isabel remembered that about a week before Aaron vanished, Christopher had spoken of visiting the park with a friend to check out mines, mentioning one so remote no one would ever find it. Investigators followed that lead, bringing in a local expert familiar with the region's many scattered abandoned mines. Guided by that knowledge, law enforcement and volunteers began a thorough, methodical search of the park. They covered 3,000 square kilometers of wilderness, with 6 agencies eventually joining. Despite weeks of effort, no results emerged, leading to the difficult choice to suspend the search on Saturday, August 16, 2014. Yet that same day, in a startling twist, a spelunker detected a powerful smell of gasoline coming from one of the shafts. In the final hours of August 16, volunteers lowered a camera-equipped bucket into the mine. At 9 meters the oxygen was already toxic. Deeper, around 30 meters, they saw what looked like a body. After tremendous work late that Saturday night, 2 months after her disappearance, the body was recovered. A propane tank, thought to have been part of an unsuccessful attempt to destroy the remains, was also found at the bottom. The body was flown to the morgue, where due to advanced decomposition dental records confirmed it was Aaron. She had died from asphyxiation caused by an object still tightly wrapped around her neck. It was also determined she had been pregnant. The devastating news that Aaron and her unborn child had been murdered plunged her family into turmoil. Though it was the worst possible outcome, for her mother it was at least more bearable than the endless uncertainty of not knowing where her daughter was. For now her only wish was to bring Aaron's body back to Tennessee for a proper burial. With Christopher having motive, means, and opportunity and evidence mounting, he was soon arrested by an officer in Anchorage. His vehicle was impounded. Under the passenger seat, police found a homemade item matching the one around Aaron's neck. That discovery led them to question Christopher's mother. She denied any knowledge of the object and said she had never seen it, but a subsequent search of her home turned up a magazine issue with an article about Aaron's case. Following the arrest, the case attracted nationwide media coverage. San Bernardino police held a press conference detailing the investigation, naming Christopher the main suspect. They also searched Isabel's ranch, to her surprise, and recovered Christopher's rifle, further damaging his position. Incriminating online search history tied to him surfaced as well. Christopher was charged with first-degree murder. On Friday, September 19, 2014, hundreds of candles burned in quiet remembrance of Aaron and her unborn child, whose lives ended far too soon. About 250 people gathered at the vigil, many wearing custom t-shirts with Aaron's name on the front and a Bible verse on the back. During this time, Jonathan spoke to just one media outlet despite numerous requests. In that interview, he expressed his deep anger at Christopher's actions but said clinging to hatred every time he thought of him would eventually destroy him. Jonathan revealed he had learned the affair had resumed and that his wife vanished while going to meet Christopher, still his neighbor. Part of him wanted to confront Christopher violently, but he chose not to, refusing to become the same kind of person. Jonathan did not want to turn bad. The quest for justice for Aaron Corwin reached the courtroom 2 years later, in October 2016. From the outset, the prosecution clearly showed Christopher's pattern of violence along with his motive and opportunity. On Wednesday, October 19, a forensic scientist testified that a .22 caliber shell casing recovered near the mine matched Christopher's firearm based on firing pin impressions. When the defense presented its case, Christopher was the sole witness. On the stand, he acknowledged the evidence against him and admitted to killing Aaron. Yet he then offered a version of events that was plainly false and desperate. He claimed he had come to believe Aaron was abusing his daughter while babysitting her, leading to a supposed revelation that Saturday in the desert. He argued this gave him justification for what he did, evidently hoping the story would lessen his punishment. Throughout the trial, he remained calm and cooperative in demeanor. Still, the jury rejected his account entirely. After just 15 minutes of deliberation, Christopher Brandon Lee was found guilty of first-degree murder. The next month, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the wake of the tragedy, Aaron's family, joined by various community groups, launched a petition to the Bureau of Land Management urging funding and support to seal abandoned vertical mine shafts, starting with the one where Aaron lost her life. Recognizing the massive scope and noting some areas had already been secured, they asked that this site receive priority to spare other families similar heartbreak. Looking back on the entire ordeal and the relief that arrived with the final verdict, Aaron's mother said that by the end of the sentencing she felt utterly drained emotionally and physically. She had carried an unbearable weight for over 2 years, grief so intense she could hardly move. But after the verdict and sentence, she felt an enormous burden lift away. She compared the sensation to the day she officially adopted Aaron. After years of uncertainty and stress during the adoption process, all of it vanished the moment Aaron received her last name, just as the relief came when Christopher's fate was sealed. As for Jonathan Corwin, Aaron's husband, he shielded himself from heavy media exposure and began the slow work of piecing his life back together after such a shattering loss. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the Hidden Cases files. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.